After I had decided to take on the MGB, my first plan was to travel to the other side of the country, pick the car up and drive the car all the way back, a journey of some 200 plus miles. As the time drew closer to do this, I thought better of it, and I decided to pay somebody to go down there with the trailer and bring the car back. And as it turns out, I think that was a good decision, because after getting to know the car, I realised that had I attempted to drive it back in the state that it was in terms of tune and equipment, I probably would have only got as far as Liverpool or Preston on the M6 before I suspect it would have conked out. This is about the richness of the vehicle and how I came to be aware that it was running very, very rich, and the general signs, because I didn't have any gas testing equipment at that point. All I could rely on was my eyes and my nose. No, the chap that brought it on the trailer phoned me about 15 minutes before to say, hey, I'm nearly there, I'll be 10 minutes away. So I was waiting outside when he arrived. So he unstrapped it from the trailer and he attempted to reverse it off the trailer. He pulled the choke out, tried to start the car. It wouldn't go. He could not get it to fire. It just kept turning over and over and over, wouldn't fire. So then he had a little think about it and he pushed the choke back in. And once he'd pushed the choke back in all the way, he turned the car over, and after about 4 or 5 seconds, it started and it did go. And his words to me then were, oh, that's a good sign if it will start without any choke. But thinking about it now, that was probably the first clue that this vehicle was set very rich indeed. So after it had been here a few days, I'd done a few basic checks to make sure everything was reasonably okay. I started to take it out on short journeys. And after every one of those journeys, I removed the spark plugs and I examined them. And on nearly every occasion, the plugs were black. Even after a few longer journeys, when I checked the plugs, they were nearly always dark, very dark, or black. And on one occasion, we got about a quarter of a mile from the house and it started to falter when I was trying to accelerate. So I turned around and came back. It was after this I decided to take the tops off those carbs and check how far down the jets were in the carburetors. And I found that they were down 3 millimeters from the bridge. So I went to my old MG log of all my previous cars to check how far down the jets were in the bridges for those vehicles. And what my notes told me were, in almost all cases, the jets were never more than 1.5 to 2 millimeters down from the bridge. And this was for fast road, lead-free heads with K&N filters and electronic ignition. So the fact that these jets were 3 millimeters down sort of confirmed for me that this thing was set way too rich. And there was something else. I could smell that the car was rich. It just smelt very strong. And also, after every journey, this area here, at the bottom of the rear valance, was totally covered in black soot. All the way around here, black soot. So this was a sure sign that this car was set way too rich. There was too much burnt deposits coming out of the exhaust pipe and then sticking all around here. Since I have adjusted the carburetors, I don't get any carbon sticking to the back end of this car now. Just tiny little bits, but nothing like it was. So the jet depth suggested it was rich. The carbon at the end of the exhaust pipe on the valance suggested it was rich. The condition of the plugs suggested it was rich. And you could smell it was a bit too smelly. The car faltering on the road suggested it was rich. So changes that I made, I brought the jet depth back up to about 1.6, 1.7 millimeters. I didn't know if that was correct, but I just brought it up from where it was 3 millimeters down. I put new plugs in. I got myself a Gunson's gas tester, and during this time I also switched to K&N filters, and I put number 6 needles in the carburetors, which are obviously richer needles. So once I plugged the Gunsons in, it read 8% at idle. That is way too rich. So I had to adjust it to get it down to just around 4 to 4.5%, which is where I think it needs to be. And the jet depths at that setting are 1.3 millimeters down. And since I've done all that, as I've said, I don't get any soot at the back of the car now. The car runs sweetly, the car does not falter, and the plugs generally, most of the time, look absolutely fine after it's been on a good run. So I am of the conclusion that this vehicle, and I don't know how many years, was running very, very rich. So I just hope it hasn't caused any major long-term problems inside the engine. Hopefully not. They're pretty robust, these old cars, and after a few good runs it might just well clean itself out. But definitely this car was running rich, and it had been into garages for checks and things, and I just cannot understand how they did not pick this up. So now the car drives and runs as sweetly as I remember they can do when they're properly set and properly tuned. It may not be 100%, but I think it's near enough. I'm happy with it.